Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Krishna Swadamo Bhagate Dhammaganari Bisaha. Kalana Sadashamesha. Parano Konado Data. Narayana Namaskritcha. Naram Shaivam Narotama. Devim Saraswatim Vyasam. Tato Jayamudirayat. Okay, we are on Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 14, text 3. And the Pandavas are getting ready to give up this world. So, how does this work? Do I say, you say? Okay, will that you be able to follow that, or should I just chant the Sanskrit? What do you usually do?
So Maharaj, but the speaker usually recites the verse thrice and then asks if the devotees would like to chant the verse, and then we go ahead from there.
All right, well, let's try that. Kalasya chagatim rodram viparyasta tudamina papiyasim nrinam vartam krodaloban ritatmanam. Kalasya chagatim rodram viparyasta tudamina papiyasim nrinam vartam krodaloban ritatmanam. Okay, anyone want to chant?
I can try, Maharaj. Kalasya chagatim raudram viparyastartu dharmina papiyasim drinam vartam krodalobhandritatmanam.
Anyone else? Any other pandits out there?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki. Kalasya cha gatam raudram viprayastatu dharminaha papastya nrutam vartam krodalobasya krodalobanatam manadam. Hare Krishna.
Anyone else?
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Pranam. Kalasya cha gatim raudram viparyastartu dharminaha papi yasim nirnam vartam krodha lobha nirtatmanam. Hare Krishna.
All right. I'll say the word for word. Kalasya, eternal time. Cha, also. Gatim, direction. Rodram, fearful. Viparyasta, reversed. Ritu, seasonal. Dharmana, regularities. Papya, yasim, sinful. Nrinam, of the human being. Vartam, means of livelihood. Krodha, anger. Lobha, greed. Anrita, falsehood. Atmanam, of the people. Translation. He saw that the direction, he means Yudhisthira Maharaj. He saw the direction of eternal time had changed, and this was very fearful. There were disruptions in seasonal regularities. The people in general had become very greedy, angry, and deceitful. And he saw that they were adopting foul means of livelihood. Also, you say, he saw that the direction of eternal time had changed. You say.
Saw that the direction
Well,
of eternal time.
that's going to be a cacophony of different paces. All right. So let's just read the purport. Are you going to page down as we read? Very good. When civilization is disconnected from the loving relation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, symptoms like changes of season regularity, Foul means of livelihood, greed, anger, and fraudulence become rampant. The changes of seasonal regulations refer to the season's atmosphere becoming manifest in another season. For example, the rainy season being transferred to autumn, or the fructification of fruits and flowers from one season to another. A godless man is invariably greedy, angry, and fraudulent. Such a man can earn his livelihood by any means, black or white. During the reign of Maharaja Yudhisthira, all the above symptoms were conspicuous by their absence. But Maharaja Yudhisthira was astonished to experience even a slight change in the godly atmosphere of his kingdom, and at once he suspected the disappearance of Lord Krishna, of the Lord. Foul means of livelihood implies deviation from one's occupational duty. There are prescribed duties for everyone, such as Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Sudra. But anyone who deviates from his prescribed duty and declares another's duty to be his own is following a foul and improper duty. A man becomes too greedy for wealth and power when he has no higher objective in life, and when he thinks that the eternal life of a few years, the earthly life of a few years, is the all in all. Ignorance is the cause of all the anomalies in human society, and to remove this ignorance, especially in this age of degradation, the powerful sun is there to distribute light in the shape of Srimad Bhagavatam. Just, Om Ganatamarandasya Gyana Gana Salakaya Jakshushrimiltan Gina Tasmade Shri Gurave Namaha. Just to take a moment and this wonderful purport by Srila Prabhupada. And somebody said to Prabhupada one time that the Bhagavatam, it's antiquated. You're talking about a battlefield with bows and arrows. And now we've got drone warfare. And so, this is all antiquated. It doesn't apply to our life in modern times. But the fact of the matter is, when Prabhupada was challenged like that, Prabhupada said, what has changed? Has birth, death, disease, and old age changed? Has lust, greed, and anger changed? Has the three modes of material nature changed? So, maybe you've changed the shape of the jar, but the contents is the same. So, hey, Govardhan, can you open this? The issue, we're right in the middle of all these things. Let's go piece by piece in the purport. Thanks. Well, let me say this first. Of course, most people shop online now, but if you go to the mall and you're looking for a shop, suppose you want to buy a pair of shoes, and you know the shop, but you don't know where it is, what do? Go into deep meditation and hope that the location of the shop will be manifest in your heart? What do? You're at a mall. You want to find out where a store is. What do they have in every large mall?
A directory?
Exactly. They got a signboard. And on that signboard, they have a little, you push the store, they'll give you a map. And there's two elements. They'll show you where the store is, right? But what do you also need to know? They got to show you where you are. They say, oh, you're here, where you want to go is here, and then you can figure out on the map. It's not complicated. So here in the Bhagavatam, it's saying, here's where you are. You know, when they do a sankalpa for the beginning of a yajna, and they locate, America, Kanda, this, that, Portland, Puri, and they lock it in. You get target lock on where you are, so to speak. So Bhagavatam is telling us, hey, this is where we're at. We're in Kali Yuga. And here's the symptoms of Kali Yuga and what to do about it. Here's where you should be, here's where you are, and here's how to get there. So it's describing here, let's go piece by piece through the purport. When civilization, we immediately Prabhupada jumps to the cause. If I want to cure a disease, if I go to the doctor and I've got an issue, what is the first step in curing a disease? Not all at once now. Somebody raised their hand. And Nartam, can you see everybody?
Yes, Maharaj.
Okay. The question before us is, if I want to cure a disease, okay, I need a good medicine, I need a good doctor, I need all those things, but those are a secondary.
Acknowledge that you are diseased.
Okay, that's good. I hadn't thought of that. That's good. But the fact that I've gone to the doctor means that I've accepted that I'm diseased. The first thing is a
Ascertain the
proper
symptoms.
diagnosis. Hey,
Check the
Jai
symptoms.
Sachin.
Yeah. Check the symptoms. Find out what's bothering the person and then try to figure it out through the symptoms.
Yeah, but you're correct. But you've got to have a correct diagnosis. And once you have a correct diagnosis of what the problem, and of course you need the symptoms, to get there, but you need to have a correct diagnosis, and then you can do a cure. So we need Prabhupada says right here, when a civilization is disconnected from the loving relationship with his Supreme Personality of Godhead, symptoms like, and then Prabhupada gives the whole list. If you want to solve the problem, the real problem is we're out of whack with harmony with Krishna. People say, oh, well, this is just religious sentiment, and you've got to be practical. They have that saying that if you want to get to the truth, you ask why 5 times. Well, this is happening. Well, why is it happening? And well, it's happening because of this. Well, why is that happening? It's because of this. You get to the underlying symptoms. Otherwise, you're just superficial. You're blowing on a boil. It doesn't solve the problem. So Prabhupada is saying right off the bat, and this is the duty of Shastra and the duty of a Bhagavatam. We're thinking, well, I'll give you another example. It says in the Bhagavad Gita that if you want to be happy, you have to have controlled senses. And if you want controlled senses, then you have to control the mind. And if you want to control the mind, it's a series of steps. And it comes to, then you have to have steady intelligence. And if you want steady intelligence, you have to have an understanding of the Supreme. Now, everyone wants to become happy, but they're thinking that if I have an itch and I scratch it, well, there's some momentary relief. So we're thinking, Prabhupada said that modern civilization is simply scratching the itch. My stomach's empty, I'll eat something. But that's not really the ultimate cause. If we want to become happy, then the real way we become happy is to have controlled senses. Well, so then the next section is, how do you have to have controlled senses? And that means, well, you have to have control of the mind. Okay, well, how do I have control of the mind? Then it says you have to have steady intelligence. Okay, how do I get steady intelligence? And how do you get steady intelligence? It says one has to be fixed in transcendence. So unless we understand, wait a minute, there's Krishna and he's the supreme controller. And if I want to, like they say, if you can't get your computer or whatever it is to work, make sure it's plugged in first. Okay, let me make sure it's plugged in. So unless we are in harmony with Krishna, like Krishna says in I think it's 3rd chapter Bhagavad Gita, that that the world is sustained by Jagat. And if you follow Yajna, all the demigods are satisfied. If the devas are satisfied, then you get rain, you get all the seasons, everything, and then you can get grains and you can live happily. So the world is a machine. It's a giant, complicated machine. And there's laws that operate that machine. And unless you follow those laws, they're thinking that, it's standard reductionist approach to things, that everything can be broken down into little pieces that operate by the laws of physics. And if I understand the laws of physics, I can control matter. I break it down into pieces. I understand that those pieces are moving by the laws of physics. If I know the laws of physics, I can control matter. But it doesn't work that way. Yes, you have to know the laws of physics, how the machine operates, but the ultimate operation is it works by Krishna's laws. So what it's saying here, as soon as you're disconnected from understanding that things don't go my way, things go Krishna's way, I have to learn how to cooperate with the will of Krishna. If I comport to, if I submit to the laws of Krishna, the way Krishna set up the machine. I'll give you an example. There was the landlord of my apartment. He was an elderly gentleman, an old man, and his name was Mr. Lowe. My kids' joke for him was Mr. Slow, because he wasn't the brightest bulb in the chandelier, as they say. So Mr. Slow, I'm driving with my kids many years ago, and we're at a red light. We're stopped at the red light, whatever. And we saw Mr. Lowe. And Mr. Lowe was trying to get into a restaurant. So, and he was pushing on the door and he was pushing on the door, but the door wouldn't open. And you saw him, he looked in the glass, in the window, there were people inside. It was obviously open, but he kept pushing on the door and couldn't get in. And my intelligent daughter realized what was happening. She rolled down her window and said, Mr. Lowe, pull, pull. In other words, he was pushing the door, but he had to pull it open. It worked the other way. He was pushing the door. He's never going to get in. He's got to realize, oh, I have to pull the door. So the thing is that we're trying to control material nature, but we're going against the tide. We're going against the current. We're supposed to cooperate with the laws of Krishna. If we follow the laws of Krishna, the way the material nature is set up, we'll live normally. We'll be happy. The laws of nature will be in harmony with them. But due to pride and arrogance, a false idea of their intelligence, they're just making havoc. They're pushing against a machine that's designed to be pulled. So the ultimate resting point is that everything works according to Krishna's desire. It's meant for Krishna's service. And if we use things in Krishna's service, then we become freed from greed and wealth and, all the ignorance that's described here. If we cooperate with Krishna, then all the subordinate factors fall into line. And if we don't cooperate with Krishna, it requires some humility. In the first step of self-realization, in the Bhagavatam, it's meant to make us humble. The meditation on the universal form is meant to make us humble. Hey, guess what, Jiva? You're not in charge of everything. You don't control everything. There is a higher power. They understand. Prabhupada points out that the Aborigines or the Adivasis or the Junglis, whatever it is, they'll worship a volcano because it's very powerful. Or they'll worship the thunder and lightning because it's powerful. And they worship the devas because they're dependent on the sun, and they have a fertility god because they're dependent on a fruitful, crop. And it's all meant to drum into their head, hey, you are not independent. You are not the controller. You're subordinate. You're dependent. And unless we understand that, we're always going to be trying to put a square peg in a round hole, which is what we're trying to do now. So Prabhupada says here, when civilization is disconnected from the loving relation with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, everything's out of whack. Things will not work. And he gives one of the first symptoms like changes of seasonal regulations. Hey, are we experiencing that? What is one of the most existential problems facing the world? What's going on right now with the G20, the top 20 nations? Anyone know? Will follow the news? There's what is it called? The
COP,
climate. What is that thing called?
climate change.
Yeah, they're having a big because everything's out of whack. The ocean levels are rising, global warming. All the seasons are out of whack. Somebody said, there was a newspaper reporter, and he couldn't understand at all. And he said to Prabhupada, thinking that his question was, what would happen if the whole world became Krishna conscious? If everyone became a devotee, what would happen? He's thinking, how will the world go on? So if everyone become, because the Hare Krishna devotees are just ringing bells and eating rice. So they have that, monastic, they have their misconception that we're just cloistered and, whatever. So the man said to Prabhupada, well, what would happen if everyone became Krishna conscious? And Prabhupada's answer was, well, it would only rain in the evening, after all the animals were in. The weather would be always like this. Every tree would give a fruit and a flower. He began to describe the symptoms of Satya Yuga. So again, because what is the cause? Ask why, 5 times. What are the causes? And here's the symptoms. And Prabhupada's giving us the cause, and here's the symptoms. Well, seasonal changes, seasonal irregularities. Everything's out of whack. And there's no question about it. That's what's happening. They've got, monsoon comes late. They got flooding. What are these superstorms? Hurricanes are worse than, they're getting bigger and bigger and stronger because they're messing around with the machinery. And the whole machinery of the material world's out of whack because they're not following the laws of Krishna. Okay, so that's the changes of seasonal regulations refer to when season's atmosphere becomes manifest in another season, rainy season, all there's that. Then what about people's character? Hang on a sec here. And we're going to stop a little early. My point is this. The Bhagavatam is true. The Bhagavatam is not dated. The Bhagavatam is accurate. It's prophetic. It's the real news. It's not something sentimental that my grandmother read and okay, maybe it's got some philosophy and, if it helps you get through the night, okay, fine. But I wanted the facts. I want the truth. That is what the Bhagavatam is. Prabhupada ends the purport by saying the powerful sun is there to distribute light. They're in darkness. They don't know what the problems are. They know there's suffering. They know the symptoms. People in Kali Yuga, Bhagavatam says, are lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. So if the symptoms are accurate, the Bhagavatam, all these things are true. You look around. You know what charity is in Kali Yuga? Charity in Kali Yuga is the washerman, the laundryman gives back your clothes. That's the most charity you can expect. Somebody bites into an apple and says, "Oh, this is rotten. Do you want it?" People, when they donate cars to the temple, usually they're completely broken. They can't be sold. Nobody would take it as a gift, so they donate it to the temple as a tax write-off. So we are in Kali Yuga. There's no question about it. And the Bhagavatam is describing all of these symptoms. Bhagavatam is spot on. And if it's spot on with the symptoms, both individually and collectively, everything's out of season, everything's, all the climate issues we talked about. And personally, people are lonely. People are fearful. What's going to happen at the next moment? So the symptoms as described in Bhagavatam are accurate. Far beyond, Prabhupada's writing this purport. This is the first canto in the Bhagavatam. So Prabhupada's writing this in 75, not 1970, 1955, 1960. And it's spot on. It's completely accurate. So therefore, it's logical. If the symptoms are accurate, then maybe the diagnosis of what the cause of the problem is accurate. And here it's saying, because they're disconnected with a loving relationship with Krishna. Are devotees ever lonely? If you have a genuine love for Krishna, Prabhupada was sitting in his room one time. It was a cold day. The clouds cleared. The sun shined through Prabhupada's window. And Prabhupada said, someday, he was speaking to the devotees, you'll feel this sunlight like the lover's embrace. So for a devotee, he feels the light. Krishna says, I'm the light of the sun and the moon. So you feel the cooling relief of the moon, the nice warm sunshine as a loving embrace. Krishna says, I'm the pure taste and water. So a devotee, he doesn't feel lonely. He knows Krishna is everywhere. Krishna is in my heart. So devotee doesn't feel lonely. Devotee doesn't feel fearful. We pray to Lord Nrsingadev. We know he saved Prahlad. He'll save me too if I'm surrendered. So my point is that Prabhupada's saying a civilization disconnected from a loving relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You reestablish that, all the psychological, anxiety, social problems, they're solved. You follow Krishna's rules, all the issues are solved. One thing that impressed me when I was first reading Prabhupada's books, because there's all kinds of systems, how to organize society. Capitalism has failed, socialism has failed, communism has failed, fascism has failed. And in the Varnashram Dharma, the divine system given by Krishna, how to become, let's take the ashrams. It's perfectly designed according to the psychological state. There's a time to go to school. Children, they can easily learn foreign languages. When you're oldster, it's difficult to teach an old dog new tricks. So there's a time to be a student. There's a time to be a householder. There's a time to be a brahmachari, student life. There's a time after you've worked out your passion, you've raised your family, you've played around with material things, you've got your house, and you tried to exploit material nature, got all that out of your system. When you become older, it's natural to become renounced. You're affected by time. You can't eat so much. You can't sleep so well. Eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, they're all disturbed when you get older. And you think, forget it, But instead of going on Tirtha Yatra, they get a motorhome and they go see the Grand Canyon. But the instinct is there. I'm not trying to crank up the material enjoyment machine is not working. I'm too old. So let me just become a little renounced, travel. That's Varnaprastha. And ultimately, like we see here with the Pandavas, this is a lesson to all of us. Ultimately, we've all got to become renounced. Does anyone know? Here's Prabhupada's example about renunciation and the Varna and ashram system, especially the ashrams. When you cut your fingernails, if you cut it too short, it hurts. If you cut it at the right distance, you don't feel a thing. So there's a way to do it, to cut your fingers right that it doesn't cause pain. So there's a time for renunciation. It's a gradual process, but we all have to recognize, hey, it happens to all of us. We are all going to drop dead. I'll give you an example. Prabhupada tells a story from the Agni Purana, actually. How does it work? Okay, so the demigods, the devas, are having a yajna. And they're all throwing grains into the fire. Swaha. And you know, when you throw grains into the fire, not all the grains land in the fire. So there's some, you know, around the sides, this and that. So there was a bird, and a little bird, he was coming and picking the grains, you know, the little ones that weren't in the fire. And Yamaraj kept looking at him. So the little bird, you know, you've got Yamaraj, all the other devas are there, Surya's there, Vayu's there, all the devas are there. So Yamaraj is also there. And this little bird got completely spooked. Why was Yamaraj kept looking at him? So he thought, I got to get out of here. I got to hide somewhere. So he went to Garuda. Garuda's also there at Yajna. And he said, Yamaraj is giving me the evil eye. Can you get me out of here? So Garuda said, what do you want? He said, take me to the top of Mount Sumeru. The little bird said, you take me to the top of Mount Sumeru. He'll never find me there. He won't know I'm there. So Garuda said, all right, being merciful to his little sister bird. He said, get on my back. And you know, Garuda can fly, you know, at the speed of the mind, zip, zip. He drops off the little bird and he's back. So when he gets back, the jug is over, and they're all sitting down taking prasadam, all the devas lined up, just like we do. So Garuda is sitting next to Yamaraj. So Garuda is sitting next to Yamaraj, and Garuda asks him. Garuda says, hey, how come you get given the evil eye to this little bird? My sister bird, you were staring at him, and you spooked her. Why were you staring at this little bird? And Yamaraj is quite apologetic. He said, no, I wasn't giving him the evil eye. I wasn't, you know, giving her the evil eye. So Yamaraj said, well, why, Garuda said, why were you looking at her? And Garuda said, I was just wondering, she's sitting here at this yajna on Brahmaloka, but I have an appointment with her this afternoon at the top of Mount Sumeru. And I was wondering, how is she going to get there? Do you follow? So she was trying to escape from Yamaraj by going to the top of Mount Sumeru. But that was exactly where Yamaraj was supposed to meet her. She actually accomplished, she put herself right where she was supposed to be in the crosshairs of Yamaraj. So we can't avoid it. Yudhisthira Maharaj says, what's the most wonderful thing? He that riddle when he was asked, you know, there's a whole story there in the Mahabharata. What's the most wonderful thing? And Yudhisthira Maharaj says that all around us, everybody's dying, but nobody thinks they're going to die. It's the most mystical thing. Everybody's going to drop dead. Nothing's certain but death and taxes. So on the micro level, individually, Yudhisthira, we are in Kali Yuga, and we'll sum up here, and then we can see if you have some questions. But we should be thoughtful. We should know where we're at, like at the mall, looking for the directory. Bhagavatam is telling us, hey, you're in Kali Yuga. Here's all the symptoms. It's not a nice place. You're not going to be happy here. And here's the reason. You're disconnected from Krishna. And oh, by the way, you're going to get old and drop dead anyway. You got to be prepared for that. You've got to realize what the ultimate goal is. Here we see the Pandavas, they weren't hanging on. I mean, they were the emperors of the world. They weren't trying to squeeze out a few more years of happiness. When the time came, they saw the symptoms, they saw the atmosphere. They said, it's time to get out of here. And they turned to the north. So on the micro level, on the macro level, on the big scale, what's happening in the world, global warming, superstorms, this place is a mess. And the Bhagavatam is giving the immediate cure, that you follow the laws of Krishna, you comport with the natural laws of this world, you don't try to control material nature according to your laws, you follow Krishna's laws, and you recognize that ultimately I have to leave this world. So my point is that the Bhagavatam is prescriptive and descriptive. It describes what the actual condition is, and it's the prescription how to get out of it, how to become happy in this world and go back home, back to Godhead. So it is not sentiment. It is not armchair philosophy. It's not superficial. It's not, whatever. The Bhagavatam is right on. It's accurate. It's prophetic, and it's prescriptive. How to get out of this. So we should all glories to Srimad Bhagavatam, the light in this age, and brought into focus by Srila Prabhupada's purports. It is perfect and timely. Okay, we can end there. What happened? Okay, so does anyone have any question? Oh, look at this. So anybody have a question? Now, Narottam Vilas Prabhu, can you see the hands?
Yes, Maharaj.
If you raise your hand, and we'll be done on time, but if anyone has a question, raise their hand. And I can't see you, so you call on them.
Yes, sir, sure.
And to save time, just ask your question. I don't need a big setup. I don't need to say, oh, Maharaj, it was like hearing from, Cricket, Sukhadev. No. Save the praise, save all the excerpt, and just ask the question. Don't give a second purport or a second class. Ask a question. Okay? Who's got a question? Did I scare you
Madhuri
all
Prabhu
off?
has a question. Madhuri Prabhu, please go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. So
Yes.
I have a question on that verse translation itself. It says the direction of time has changed. Yudhishthir Maharaj saw. So direction of time is linear, at least, or in the sense it goes forward. So what does that mean, direction?
Actually, it's cyclical, to tell you the
Yes.
truth.
Mm-hmm.
There's the different yugas, and they repeat, Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, Kali Yuga, Satya Yuga. So it's not actually linear, it's cyclical, but go ahead.
Yes. So within
And
a
even
yuga-
for us, even our life, it's the same cycle. You get, you're young, you get middle age, you get old, you drop dead, and you come back again. But go ahead.
Correct, Maharaj. So what does it mean? Direction has changed, which means like things are going in reverse. What does that mean?
Things are out of sync. When you read what Prabhupada describes in the purport, I don't have it in front of me right now, but you look at the purport and Prabhupada's describing things are they're not in natural order. There should be a natural order. I mean, I'm 72 years old. There it is. That's what the time is out of sync. When it should be rainy season. I mean, I remember in California, I grew up in California, there was a rainy season. It started in November, December, and it rained to February. And then, it was just, in the summertime, every day was like it was made out of a machine. It was the same temperature, a blue sky. You knew when the fruit season was, you knew when the flowers bloomed. Things did what they were supposed. things were in sync. And now everything's completely topsy-turvy. It got super cold early in San Diego. I'm a gardener. And things died off. The bulbs didn't come, this didn't happen, that didn't happen. The rose seasons, the plumerias, they all they stopped blooming. And it happens with farmers all the time. You know, and then all of a sudden gets super warm, out of season, and everything blooms. The fruit trees bloom. And then all of a sudden, when it should be spring, they get a boom storm? And everything freezes. And they lose all the fruit off the trees because all the little, buds of fruit all freeze. So it means that there should be and it gives you a certain sense of peace and tranquility. Everything turns according to season, and you can plan accordingly, but everything now is topsy-turvy. It's backwards. So that's what it means. The time is, on one hand, your point is correct. The seasons are linear in that each follows the other according to the natural pattern of things. And now everything's completely topsy-turvy, backward, mixed up, and people are in chaos. Okay, that's my best shot at it. Anyone else have a question? So, did I scare everybody off? Narottam, anybody got a question?
Noted, Maharaj.
All righty then.
Questions? Okay.
Huh?
No, I don't see Maharaj. I don't see any hands raised.
I don't see any hands up. All right, Prabhus. Thank you very much for your association. But the roadmap for life, the Rosetta Stone, the deciphering this world. Everybody's got. I was in the airport, and there's so many books offering advice. Everybody's got advice. This, that, yeah, different. But the Bhagavatam is the actual deciphering of life. It explains what's going on in this world. It makes sense of the whole thing. So we should regularly, and as you're doing, absorb our mind in the Bhagavatam. And we should, whatever the ultimate paragon of truth, it's the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is understood by the great acharyas, Srila Prabhupada. I'll tell you one last story and we'll end here. Prabhupada came to the Brooklyn Temple. This is 1975. And the old temple on Henry Street, there was Prabhupada's rooms were in the back. And right in that back of the building, there was a little garden area. There were devotees from all over America that had come to see Prabhupada. So there was always milling around and talking. And they would hanging out in that little garden in the back and making noise. So the devotees, the temple president, said nobody should be in this garden, in this back area, because you're right under Prabhupada's window and you're going to make noise and distract him. So don't do it. So to make sure nobody hung out there, there was a guard system. And so they asked for volunteers. They broke the day. Prabhupada was there for about 3 days. They broke everything into shifts, and you had a time that you could be the guard in the backyard. So I wanted to help. I volunteered. And my shift was from 1 o'clock till 3 o'clock. Now, a.m., early morning or late at night, whatever you want to call it. So that was my shift. So I was there 1 o'clock, chanting japa quietly. under Prabhupada's window in the back garden. And all of a sudden, I mean, I should have actually expected it, but it was about 1 o'clock in the, maybe what, 1:15, the light went in Prabhupada's darshan room. And Prabhupada came out and sat behind his desk. And you know, when it's dark outside and light inside, you know, the light's on inside, you can see in, but you can't really see out so well, but you can see in very well. So I saw Prabhupada sit behind his desk. And the first thing he did was he picked up, you know, Pradumna had done the translation work. You know, he would always stay a few verses ahead and he would do the translation and the word for word. So Prabhupada picked up his work and he looked at it and made a few corrections, you know, like that. But I mean, it's scholarly work, it's a pundit's work. But, you know, Prabhupada didn't need to do that. He had Pradumna. So Prabhupada would focus, he would check it, and he would check his, you know, translation and the verse, the actual translation of the verse. But Prabhupada's main focus was his Bhagavatam purports, because that no one else could do. And I saw Prabhupada, excuse me, you know, he checked the word for word in the Sanskrit. Okay, fine, it was okay. Made a few corrections. And then he leaned back and he chanted a round or two, meditating on the verse. And then he picked up his dictaphone and he began to give his Bhaktivedanta purport. And I was watching all of this. And then he pulled down his Bhagavatam. He had a Bhagavatam that had 5 different commentaries. Commentary by Sridhar Swami, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. It had Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. It had Baladev Vijabhushana. I forget who the 5, but it has 5 different commentaries on each verse. So then he would digest that. Then he would read, you know, he'd pick up his dictaphone and say a little bit more. So while this was happening, I was watching. And I was thinking that when I read Prabhupada's purports, he's pouring down all the Vedic wisdom onto the pages of his Bhagavatam purports. So I was chanting, and I was, you know, as much as my little self could be, I was enlivened thinking about this. So Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare, I was chanting a little louder. And then I was thinking, and all that Vedic wisdom, it's just coming down perfectly through Prabhupada's mouth, according to time, place, and circumstance, knowing the nature of modern people. Prabhupada lived in New York City. Prabhupada knew where we were at, you know, the people of this age. So I was saying, I'm hearing from all the acharyas, and Prabhupada's personally, perfectly presenting it, distilling it, and presenting that to me. So I was more enlivened. I was Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. And then I was thinking, and all I have to do is just pick up the Bhagavatam and read it. I just have to open it up. It's right there on my shelf. And I'm associating with Sukadev Goswami and Narada Muni and the Pandavas, and hearing the commentaries of all the great acharyas, perfectly distilled and presented for modern men in Prabhupada's purports. I was Hare Krishna. Now remember that my mission was to keep things quiet. Remember, that was the reason I was there in the garden. Prabhupada took his glass of water on his desk and he threw it out the window all over me. I was thinking, oh, Abhishekam, you know. But it was like you throw a boot at a cat and make a noise, you know. Prabhupada was, hey, I'm working here, you know. Prabhupada said that my books will stand. He said it twice. He said it to Ramaswara and Harikesh. I have two independent confirmations. Prabhupada saying these books, his books, Bhaktivedanta, purport books, they will be the law books like Manu Samhita for the next 10,000 years. And all we have to do is pick it up and read it. And it's not dated. It's not antiquated. It doesn't, can't apply to modern life. You can read this purport that we just read today, and it is right on target for what the anxieties of people in the world right now today. It's both prescriptive. Here's what's going on. It's descriptive and prescriptive. Here's what's happening, and here's the cure. All glories to Srila Prabhupada's commentaries in Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, we can end there because it's a little over 9. All right, Prabhus. Thank you for
Thank you
sitting
so
so
much.
patiently.
Thank you for
Until
giving
we
us-
meet again.